Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to City Open. We've got a lot of new people here today, and we're really excited to share out what this season has kind of led us to. And so for those who have never attended City Open, we always love to start with introductions, and we've experimented with various forms, but this is still the best way to do it. So we'll go around and share. If everyone could introduce your name, pronouns, what you do, how did you hear about City Open, and or what season is this for you? And for our icebreaker, who's a person, organization, project, or effort in Chicago that you've recently learned about that you want or you want to shout out? And I'll make this bigger and start. I'm Louisa Zhang. I'm an architectural designer at Leighton Design. I heard about City Open through Paula, who was a professor years ago now at SAIC. And I'm the current fellow with Genevieve for this season, which is a pilot season for us. And a person, organization, project, or effort. Let's see here. I'm going to shout out Front Porch Art Center because I really hadn't heard about them until hearing from Maida on Fifth City Revisited. And I'm really excited to learn more about their work and follow along on what they do. So I'll pass it and popcorn to Ian.
That was quick. My name is Ian, he, him. I am a project architect at Warren Jarabic Wiltsey Architects, doing affordable housing and senior care work. And an organization that I recently, as I'm looking to move around the city, that I ran into recently is the Lawndale Christian Health Center. They offer a lot of low or no cost healthcare as well as fitness care for residents. And I really like their mission. I will pass it off to Elle.
Hi, I'm Elle Ramel, she, her pronouns. I am a co-founder of City Open Workshop. So I think I learned about it 5 years ago when I said we should do it. One thing that I just learned about that I'm really enthusiastic and I actually get the produce sent to my house. I just learned about 40 Acres Fresh Market in December. So it's a Black woman-owned grocery store in Austin, and she's working actually with Catherine Darnstadt. She's working on building out the first Black-owned grocery store in the city. And kind of a sobering fact, the first Black-owned woman grocery store in LA just started, like a whole country. So it's like a big deal. But you can actually get produce like delivered to your house, and I've been really enjoying that. I'm gonna popcorn it to Emma Securian Depana.
I heard about City Open from Paula, probably through ArchiWorks 5 years ago. So I've been kind of in and out since the very first season. Let's see. And something that I've heard about recently is in Uptown, the Wilson CTA Plaza is apparently like the first little implementation project of the Uptown Planning Study, and that's a partnership with Uptown United, the Wilson Underline, and the Chicago Market. So it's kind of a cool little thing. I actually sort of heard about it because Smith Group is engaged with some of those groups, especially our landscape group, and doing a little design competition for that space, like a mini one. So that should be pretty cool. And I will popcorn over to other Emma.
Everyone, my name is Emma Jacinski, she, her pronouns. I am an architectural designer at Canon Design. I heard about City Open through Paula a couple years ago. And organization that I recently learned about is actually in East Garfield Park. It was called Breakthrough. So they provide a bunch of different essential services and have quite a robust program of Women's Center, Fresh Market, Violence and Prevention Center, but was just recently connected with them through a teacher at elementary school in East Garfield. So looking to learn more and connect more with that organization. I will pass it off to Anjali.
Hi, I'm Anjali Rao. I'm the editor of Chicago Architect Magazine. I'm a journalist. I write about architecture and design in the city of Chicago and around the country. I heard about City Open through Paola, who is near and dear to my heart, and I've been in and out for I think like 4 seasons with City Open. An organization that I just recently learned about was actually here from Al. They talked about the West Side B-Boys, which my first job as a child was when I was 14 to about when I was 21, was on an urban farm in Colorado. And right when I left, they'd started a beekeeping program. And so now that I live on the West Side, I'm really excited to connect with them and hopefully kind of learn a little bit about beekeeping. So I want to throw it over to, I'm sorry, I can't find, okay. I want to throw it to Maida.
So I heard about City Open through Paola, and my first time was when I came in and spoke with you all a couple months back. Glad to be back. I will shout out Alexi Young and her Art West Gallery. So looking forward to, I know she opened it in the midst of the pandemic, but I think she's doing some great work, bringing a gallery space between the cusp between East Garfield Park and North Lawndale. So I'm gonna pass it to Latham.
I knew you were going to do that.
Indeed.
Hey everybody, I'm Latham. I'm an artist and I work for the Chicago Park District as a cultural liaison. So I work with Maida and Craig and also Paola, and that is who connected me to this group as well. So I'm in good company, I see. An organization that came to mind that's kind of come up in a couple of different contexts for me lately is the Chicago Tool Library. And they've been on my radar for a long time actually, but I don't actually know much about them. So this is making me like, okay, and I actually need to reach out to them for something else. So, but I think the premise is super cool and I like what they say on social media. So yeah, and I'll put their URL in the chat. Genevieve, have you gone?
I have not. I am Genevieve. She, her. I have been attending City Open for I think 2.5 or 3 years, a couple of seasons for sure. And that's kind of old news, but we just got one in the South Loop where I live. And so I'm going to shout that out because it's pretty cool. But the Chicago Love Fridge. And I will call out, let's see who hasn't gone. Annie.
Hi everyone, I'm Annie, she, her. This is my first season, I suppose, first meeting. I previously worked for the city of Chicago for 22 years. Most of that time was in planning and development. In the last 7 years, I'm running the SSA Special Service Area up in Evanston. And I last night was waiting for Colbert and saw on Channel 2 News a story that piqued my interest, and it was the Lincoln Square Ravenswood Chambers, they've merged, are working with the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce to tour and encourage and incentivize Black entrepreneurs to take and consider spaces on the north side of Chicago. And I don't know much more than that. I just heard that little bit on the news, but I thought what a cool partnership. And you know, something I often do is what I call R&D, which is rip off and duplicate. And I'm like, I'm going to R&D that idea. Oh, I'm supposed to somebody else say. Clara.
Hi, I'm Clara. This is my first City Open workshop. I've seen some like webinars and stuff like that. I work for a nonprofit called Green Star Movement as a teaching artist. So we do murals with students and communities around Chicago. And a nonprofit I learned of recently is called Mobile Makers, where high school students, or it might be other ages, but I think high school students are taught like the design thinking process so they can engage in like different kinds of projects in their communities and be able to actually design solutions for them. So I thought that was pretty cool. And Mark?
Hey there, everyone. My name is Mark Pomerick. I'm an architect at Booth Hanson. I think this is my 4th season with City Open. Let's see. I recently learned Angeli actually hosted a really cool lecture, and I learned about Home First, and they have a connection with Access Living, which we had previously had on City Open. We were talking about ADUs. So they're doing some really amazing work with more affordable and accessible housing around town, which I thought was really difficult to do, and I appreciated what they were doing.
I just dropped a list in the chat for who you can pass it to. Any name.
Thank you. I forgot. I didn't see the list. There we go. Let's go for Craig. Craig, I think you might be muted still.
I'm driving. Sorry, you all can't see
Sorry
who I'm
about that.
talking, but a lot of people on this call know that I'm usually taking meetings, moving around the city of Chicago. I'm leaving Evanston currently. I heard someone shout out Evanston. But when I'm not working with the camp and various initiatives with the Chicago Park District, I am co-facilitating a nonprofit organization, Open Architecture Chicago. We bring creatives and architects to do good in the hood. So I think I've known about City Open for years, right? Because came out of ArchiWorks. I'm also an ArchiWorks alum. But this is my first workshop, and I'm grateful to be in the space. The organization that I'm gonna shout out is actually Maida's organization, Honeypot, because she's doing like masterfully strategic work underneath the moniker of, I guess, like, I don't know, theater, arts, culture, and the intersection of like mapping and things like that. So I'm just gonna shout out Maida's brilliance, under, you know, watery brilliance in all these different areas. And it's great to be here with all of you all.
Thanks, Craig. Let's see.
And I can't really see a list, so can someone
no worries.
Yeah.
Lon, you want to go next? No, did we lose Lon?
Sorry, I had a doggy panic moment. Hi all, I'm Lon. That's my name. What do? I'm an architectural designer at Shihers. I heard about City Open through Genevieve, and this is the first official season. And I think an organization call out that I did not recently learn about, but I think I Grow in Inglewood is really cool. And what they did was just like chose a location, or like a not random location, kind of random location in a block in Inglewood, and they've just been developing like tutoring for the kids around there, taking the empty lots and developing into play spaces or like gardens, just on that block, like just taking or being very localized for that area. And then was Sean? Did you go?
Hello, my name is Sean. I'm an architect, a landscape architectural designer. I work for a firm called Optimanu. This is actually my first meeting, and I heard about Workshop because you guys came to my neighborhood, and that was the first time, and I'm just kind of interested to see how your process works. So thank you. And I'm not sure where we are on the list, so if someone could help me
No
call out
problem.
someone.
Yeah, Al, do you want to go next? Maybe we lost them. No, I see it.
Hi everyone, this is Alvin. If I was next, I apologize. My internet is acting spotty right now. So if I was next, or I can go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alvin, I am currently the property team lead / property manager at my church here in South Shore. And where we have a community garden, and also we have a Wi-Fi transceiver on the roof that provides limited accessibility to people in the range of the internet signal. We're currently working on projects that will expand that capacity. We are also working in our community garden with the Greater Chicago Food Depository for our food pantry. First heard about City Open from a fellow member of the Chicago Sustainability Leaders Network back about 6 years ago. I have been, back about 4 years ago. I've been a part of City Open workshops for about 8 seasons on and off, so about 6 for sure, 2 where I dropped off for project reasons. A person or organization that comes to mind for me is a place actually in Garfield Park. It's called Deborah's Place. They have special advocacy for homeless women. They advocate for affordable housing in the midst of gentrification. And so one of the key efforts that they make is that they host convenings where people can come talk about those types of impacts on their living conditions. And I'm not sure who else hasn't been, because like I said, my internet's been acting funky.
Yeah, no worries. Let's pass to Linda.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Shihers. I am a architectural researcher working remotely with RBTR, which is an architecture and urbanisms practice over in Ann Arbor. For the past half year, I've primarily been researching food systems and understanding how like food, water, and energy flows through a city. But I moved to Chicago back in late September after my program ended, and I finally feel like I'm situated enough where I can get reliably involved with things. Yeah, I'm not sure how I can contribute just yet, but so I might be listening a lot more today. I found City Open through personal research while I was deciding between a few programs a couple years ago, and then ended up in Michigan, but I'm here now. I was gonna say iGrow Chicago or Chicago Tool Library, but then they were taken. But I just learned about El Paseo Community Garden. I wish I could pitch it better, but I don't know too much about them yet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Paula, you want to go next?
Sure. Paula Aguirre, she, her, ella pronouns. What do? I don't know. Honestly, every day I ask myself that question. No, I'm an urban designer, so I design a lot of stuff, processes, places, spaces. working currently in a streetscape design, so that's pretty fun. But I'm founder of Borderless Studio, co-founder of City Open Workshop. So that means I've been here for 5 years equals 10 seasons. So that's pretty fun. And I think Juan is next.
Hi everyone. Juan Luna, he, him, his. I am the outreach and engagement specialist at Lucha. So I do a lot of community engagement work. How did I hear about City Open? So this is my first season being from start to finish. I heard about City Open through the Metropolitan Planning Council.
Is that just me? Juan, I think you might have cropped out.
We lost Juan.
Oh no. Okay, we'll circle back to you, Juan, but we can't hear you anymore. And we want to hear your org too. And let's pass to then Arnold.
Hello, I'm Arnold. I'm a
when we collaborated with them in Rogers Park.
Hello, Juan. Do you want to go first? You want to finish up?
No, I think we lost him. Go ahead, Arnold.
Okay. Well, I'm a transit and transportation planner. I first heard about City Open through L. I worked for a couple years back, and I've attended I don't know how many different seasons by now, but it's been 5 or 6 years of them. And person organization project. I guess giving a shout out to Glennis Green, who is known by a few of the people who are also in this group. She's a person who I had worked with for the summer of 2019 on a storytelling event that was oriented towards trying to develop intercultural communication between Asian people and Black people, which became a theme that has been very relevant over the past couple of weeks, of course, because of unfortunate events that have been happening. I guess, and she also organized, I think it was a food pantry drop-off and COVID testing and COVID vaccination sites in Brownsville. So those are other things that she did. I don't know what organization she's in though. I guess pass it back to Juan if he's back here.
I'm not sure if we have one back yet, but we can pass to Christoph.
Hi, my name is Christoph. I use he, him pronouns. I work as a data manager at a small nonprofit on the north side. I believe it is my third or fourth season of City Open, and I first heard about it through searching on Eventbrite, an organization that I haven't recently learned about, but have just known about for a while. Is My Block, My Hood, My City, and they provide a number of volunteer opportunities throughout the city, helping out seniors, as well as hosting field trip programs to get you to explore different parts of the city.
Great, thank you. And I don't know, Juan, if you're back, we'd love to have you finish your intro, but if not, we can go ahead and switch over to the presentation. I'm going to take that as a slow no, but I'll scroll through this agenda.
I don't see him, so yeah, let's just keep going.
Okay. Thanks everyone for such a rich sharing of these of resources and cool things happening in the city. I love that. I'm just going to scroll down on the agenda. If Genevieve, sorry, do you mind dropping the link in the chat again? But we do have a section for announcements too. If you have any specific upcoming events that you know of, we'd love to feel free to share and drop them here with a link so that people can look into them and RSVP, and we can add and hyperlink all of these orgs that people have shouted out. Feel free also to drop and type in your own notes. We do love taking collective notes with this doc. So I'll switch over now then to the presentation. So before I pass it over to Paula to start, we do want to just thank Camp and Maida, and am I missing anyone else who we've invited back for today? But to be here and to hear more about the work that we've started this spring, and we're really excited. If it hasn't come through yet, we're really excited to hear feedback today and insights on who else we should be talking to, as well as what are other initiatives and projects happening specifically in Garfield Park that we could be partnering with. If I've missed anything, I can hand it over to you, Paula.
Thank you. Yeah, Latham, Craig, Maida. We invited Mike too. He might just not be joining us today, but we'll make sure we circle back with him, because he was also one of the organizations that we wanted to collaborate and connect with. But this presentation, and I share with you kind of the initial narrative around it, thinking like me or a lot of folks here as planners, we are just reflecting on how typical planning and engagement processes are usually rushed and provide little space for reflection and acknowledgement of historic inequities, as well as the impact of harm and trauma caused by systemic racism that has mostly impacted communities of color. And this conversation started also thinking, okay, that was on the one hand, planners have not done a good job in planning processes historically. And, planning processes have been a rubber stamp, and we cannot afford that anymore. But also in reaction to that, a lot of these communities have seen one planning effort after the other without clear accountability or implementation frameworks, because there's no acknowledgement of a specific, like site-specific, community-specific kind of aspirations or needs, or just response to experiences that are very site-specific. And therefore, planning documents stay on shelves or without tangible outcomes, causing, in general, like planning fatigue and feeling of hopelessness. So no one believes in planning. That's kind of the short part, the short part of the story. But we believe there's another way, and in which communities can feel planning processes are also part of their own processes, and that might require just a shift in how do we collectively invest in processes, and how do we collectively think of storytelling as a very strong part of this equation. And here at City Open, we believe that planning and design processes should be opportunities to connect past, present, and future, but also supporting and strengthening communities' capacity of self-determination and the ability to tell their own story. So that's where this question came from. As planners, designers, people who really think about the built environment and transformation of places and spaces, how do we imagine then more inclusive and meaningful planning and visioning processes for historically disinvested neighborhoods, quarters, through collective narratives? And so, can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. So it was really great to learn, to kind of design a process for us to learn in such a short period of time about, specifically East Garfield Park, but also why does imagining other efforts or other forms of engagement matters? And, we're in the midst of a lot of unprecedented situations between COVID and civil unrest. Like we have seen amplified visibility of inequities. So how do we use this moment as an opportunity to reflect and think of other ways of engagement that leverage and bring visibility to community stories? So acknowledgement, community history and experiences. This is where Meta, when you open the season, I couldn't think of any more perfect way of opening the season, because you brought us back to 1960s and learning from Fifth City as a model and prototype for community care and self-determination. I was fabulous, and really got us thinking and learning more and wanting to learn more. I think that's often something, the feeling that we want to encourage. Folks want to learn more about the communities, and thinking of alternative models and alternative ways of community development. And then secondly, we got a chance to see what's going on today. So like, how do we think more intentionally identifying who is the community? And that's why learning from current community-based efforts, specifically bringing community together around health and wellness and housing and community development. The Garfield Park Community Council has been leading a lot of those in this area. So it was really great to start to think with them, who is the community? And lastly, we're designers, we're folks that are creatives and enthusiastic about how do we bring design, how do we use design to bring visibility and amplifying community stories in creative ways. So imagining how design and storytelling can contribute to this effort. And that's where, our research and case studies and thinking creatively, what are the spaces, what are the forms, what are the tools to do that? So this was an important part of the reflection.
Oops. Okay, great. So just quick orientation. We are looking at East Garfield Park, which was mentioned already, but I think we are probably pretty familiar with where that is on the west side of Chicago. We can actually just go to the next slide. So East Garfield Park was, we're focusing on that this season because of an article that came out in November 2020 called in ProPublica, and it was called Disinvested: How Government and Private Industry Let the Main Street of a Black Neighborhood Crumble. And the article focused on a history of basically how that area has been excluded from investment and development planning efforts from the 1960s all the way up until now. So there were snippets of federal and state and city-led efforts for kind of general redevelopment, but Garfield Park was always on the periphery, or there weren't any kind of tangible metrics for success there. And for all the things that have happened that have created any sort of news or I guess reason for development or reason for attention, the city has just like responded with tearing down buildings and demolition, and then it's been excluded from these planning efforts up until, I guess there's one that's coming out now, or it's a 3-year plan called We Will Chicago, called the We Will Comprehensive Plan, which is a process to elevate community narratives, and it's something that we want to be paying attention to. Looks like it's 3 years planning initiative through 2022. And it's the first one of its type since the 1996 comprehensive plan. And the point of this is to seek and encourage neighborhood growth and vibrancy while addressing the social and economic inequities that impair Chicago as a legacy, as a global city. Anyways, pass it off to Ian next.
Thanks, Genevieve. So going beyond the ProPublica article and some of the initiatives that we've maybe been looking at to see whether or not they were actually happening with the neighborhood, we wanted to actually get on the street in and of itself. And so our first experience whenever we got into it with actually being on the street was a way of how do we look at the street with regards to how it feels along Madison, and what does the vacancy actually mean, and what opportunities are still there with regards to businesses that are continuing to stay along that corridor. And so one of the things that we developed was these street elevations that are these continuous street elevations that allow you to gain a glimpse of what the corridor is like, as well of what's there and what's not, as well as we would like it to be a tool for visioning later on with regards to how we go forward after this kind of starting off point. And if we want to go to the next one.
So we've been collecting various quotes and understandings of what our speakers have brought. Thank you all again for attending. And one thing we're working on is kind of pulling those quotes and those stories, not only, you know, starting with the people that we were able to engage with at City Open, but thinking about this as a storytelling structure or having that rich storytelling fabric permeate economic development and that idea of engagement. So, you know, just taking a look at some of the what we've heard even in just this season of research and exploration. So Maida, thank you for being here, but, you know, thinking about how does generational trauma in communities affect an area like Garfield Park, and how do we work through it as a collective? So in built environment, how does trauma play into the work of rebuilding and revitalization? Next slide. Mike Thomas from the Garfield Park Community Council was able to speak about their experience working in quality of life planning and neighborhood economic development. So he's spoken about kind of the historical effort that's been going on at the hyperlocal, right? So Genevieve spoke about kind of more comprehensive city planning, but this is the Madison Pulaski Retail Plan. I mean, you look 2007, 08, you know, pre-recession. So, you know, even in there, we're just really trying to honor the history of the fact that these residents have been interviewed over and over again on the same type of format and trying to refresh that format. But in that, residents wanted to see the Madison Core as a walkable commercial corridor, different from the west side. Next slide. We've also been very lucky to, many of us have gone on several tours with Jason Ferguson. Definitely check out his Go Olympians and the wellness walks. I've heard the next one is at the involving the Garfield Park Conservatory, and we just have been able, you know, I was lucky to go on the tour and just hear that anecdotal fabric of, you know, this happened at this corner, this store used to be a Walgreens, Marshall High School, here's an event that happened when Obama was elected. So Jason spoke to what's missing are resources. He spoke about neighborhood residents that move to other communities still come back and visit, but how do we keep the neighborhood's money inside the neighborhood? A lot of references to very interesting, like Oak Park as a city center. Linnea Richardson joined us from Chicago Trend. Chicago Trend is focused on kind of restoring retail, especially with the owners of the building of color, but also BIPOC entrepreneurs. So how can retail strengthen neighborhoods? How do we use collective capital to empower entrepreneurs of color to lead and drive the corridor development, right? Not just waiting around for the Panera to show up. How do you build those businesses inside a neighborhood as well? And next slide. And then our own resident, Al Walker, they were able to talk about nourishing the community. And so there's history with the Chicago Sustainability Leaders Network and other opportunities where they've been able to witness asking, what is it about this particular community do you see as the assets that will make this community stronger? So that's the idea of the community strengths itself, feeding that kind of development and economic development. Next slide. Great. So at this point, I will transition it over to,
I think this one just wants to talk about, we like thinking of like framing processes as opposed to this space at City Open. We try to frame more questions than providing answers, and that's a very intentional way of navigating that space. So this is a way of thinking of what can we do with the resources that we have without closing the possibilities. So we often think of like, how do we then think of the questions that we can position in each one of these tasks or steps or buckets of action, to defining who is the community, what is already happening or pending or planned, what places could use some collective care. We find a lot of that definitely in this area of the city. What opportunities to expand narratives, that's definitely something that we're very invested in, and how to create accessible collections and creative ways to showcasing them. So this is just a general way to think about and organizing and framing process.
Yeah, so a big part of what we sort of decided to focus on this semester for this season of City Open is sort of the ways that we can amplify community stories. And so amplifying community stories or community narratives doesn't just mean storytelling, right? It's not necessarily just storytelling, but truly trying to collect memories and perceptions and impressions and sentiments that help shape and inform residents' experiences of their neighborhood or their sentiments around their neighborhood. So when we were talking about narratives and storytelling and like the collection of those things, I was sort of thinking about this friend of mine, Debbie Lockwood, who's at the New York Times, who rode her bike around the world, and she had this little cardboard sign with her that said, "Tell me a story about water." And she was sort of trying to collect stories and ideas and perceptions and memories about climate change. And sort of it let us start thinking about the idea that like we could activate spaces for collecting of stories and experiences. And as we've all learned from the last year, it's not just about physical spaces. It's the ways that we can activate digital spaces or informal spaces or passive non-physical spaces too, to hear the voices of the people who live there. Being able to hear about sentiment helps us prioritize narratives, the narratives of residents, and allows us to understand how pervasive certain narratives might be or pervasive certain sentiments might be, and how to prioritize those comments and themes and narratives in sort of like a grander sharing model.
So City Open wanted to engage in a conversation that starts to define the word community as outsiders and not being ingrained in the community. We wanted to start to identify, you know, organizations, institutions, you know, different infrastructure that might exist or want to exist in East Garfield Park. And then also we spoke about the people and the actions they're doing within the community. So someone who might live in Garfield Park and recently bought a house, a renter, someone raising a family, individuals who might used to live in Garfield but come back to visit. So all these different groups and identities that help make up the term community. And then we also wanted to, we kind of had these important questions that we wanted to ask individuals who identify as community members, you know, how long does it take you to consider yourself a part of the community? Do all the local leaders represent the groups they serve when we're talking about the community? Also, what type of communication is happening when it's in regard to new development that wants to be in East Garfield? And then also, what are the new plans for the community, and how have they been involved in these conversations?
So the next step, obviously, is to get to all of those people. So we, our goal is to really allow as many people, all those personas that Emma kind of identified there, to be able to tell us their stories in ways that are kind of most comfortable to them. So really be as inclusive as possible in how we actually engage by providing varied opportunities, both sort of in time and in media. So we've looked at different tools, analog and digital. So, you know, things sort of like what the example Anjali was talking about of effectively intercept interviews, but, you know, the fun version, not the corporate version. And then setting up a voicemail that people could call, having postcards that people could pick up and mail back to us, as well as kind of business cards with a QR code that links to a website that they could put their story in on. So really just trying to think through what are all the ways that someone might want to engage so we can get that broad and inclusive representation. And then, of course, the last step will be kind of documenting all that in a way sort of inspired by camp, which I think Juan and Paula will talk about in a little bit as well.
Yeah, so this is just a little snippet of how we're starting to think about these resources and assets that already exist in the neighborhood. These are some of the things that, as Ian mentioned with the elevations that we pulled, started to identify and to geolocate, as well as inspired by camp, thinking through how do we host stories, these collected stories and anecdotes and lived experiences to these geolocated, to a geolocated visual, and to see where those assets live. And how do we put that information alongside the kind of quantitative data rather than drawing conclusions purely from that data standpoint. And so on here, on the map, we've identified 3 locations as possible programming for the fall, as a kind of suggested starting point. One of them being off of Kedzie, where one of the assumptions that we kind of had walked into was thinking about the Madison Avenue corridor and how to retain that east-west connection from the neighborhood to the loop. And learning that actually Kedzie is a really important corridor, looking at the ridership and employment of people in the neighborhood moving north and south into Garfield Park. But how do we put that information alongside the neighborhood's history of Madison Street, as well as next to the lived experiences of people in the neighborhood? So let me pass to Ian and we can talk more on those pop-up locations.
Yeah, so coming off of that idea, if we looked at these areas of where we might put something, but the question is, what are we going to put in there? We've talked about some of the analog as well as digital materials. And one of the things that we wanted to do is kind of actually get into the area and create something that would not only be eye-catching, so individuals would feel like the ability to come up and talk to us and share their stories and the narratives and perceptions that they have around East Garfield Park, but also something that would activate space. And so we were looking at a couple different things, and this could possibly be it. And we would love your feedback with regards to like what you would think about it. But one of the things that we looked at was a similar setup to this that would be popped up in those locations, as well as it'd be a point for us to disseminate some of those analog materials, such as the postcards, business cards, as well as kind of geolocate themselves and where that story occurred to them, or what particular place that they find particularly wonderful about East Garfield Park, and share their stories about it. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the next couple images are really just a kind of like representation of what that could look like in space. And so you'll see it looks a little bit lime green there, but that should kind of make it stand out. It would actually probably not be lime green, but, and so what we're trying to do is kind of get into the areas that we know that there's activation already, as well as the ability to kind of catch stories. And that's part of the reason why we've coined it called the story catcher, is that way it's this kind of multifaceted device that allows people to share their stories and narratives. Click on to the next one. So that is Madison Kedzie. And then this next one is further down Madison at Madison and 5th, at that plaza that is kind of terminating that kind of triangular plot of land, as well as across the way from some of the beautiful murals in the area. So once we get that, how do we document it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ian. So yeah, as we go about trying to document this and also disseminate the information to, to the rest of the city and other folks interested, we were inspired by CAMP's Cultural Hub, the GIS project. It, mainly because it allowed us to start establishing a framework of the method of which we're going to be collecting and sharing the stories. Another thing that we want to, help elevate is shaping the community's identity and ownership. And we wish to do that with, art story maps and potentially working alongside with CAMP on collaborating and adding East Garfield Park and the Garfield Park Conservatory into the camp cultural hubs, right? We want to help visualize ways in which the community members navigate and interact with the space. We'll be doing that by conducting their interviews and story catchers, right? In order to commemorate and memorialize the lived experiences and the identity of the neighborhood. That said, we also will be working with, we're hoping to work with additional to camp with other community organizations that can provide insight into East Garfield Park. Next slide.
So I think overall, we're here because we wanted to present to the groups here that were able to attend, and thank you for coming, about exploring partnerships. So at City Open, we always recognize our strongest work is with either citywide partners or on-the-ground partners. Without that, we are a bunch of well-meaning subject matter experts with ideas wandering a neighborhood. And so we would love to anchor in intentional work with partners. And so we have done a research and framework exploration this spring. Summer, we're going to be focused on prototyping, but the fall will be about that programming and that implementation. And so, I think the discussion tonight is about, for camp, do you see there's opportunity to expand your work in Garfield Park? Is there a fall engagement? We've mentioned our ideas, but again, those can evolve alongside yours. We will be following up with the Garfield Park Community Council. So, there are already community plan events through Garfield Park. Can we provide a story catcher when people are already gathered, when there's excitement? Thinking about the wellness walks on the way, there's a fun way to interact after you've experienced a wellness walk. We're also, I think there was a lot of mention in the what do we not, cool events and people we've connected with. I heard a lot about, Maida, you referenced a different gallery. Are there artists or opportunities to connect with local artists and cultural producers? And we're also looking for other conversations to expand the network of people we could connect with to anchor our work. So again, we've highlighted Marshall High School, Front Porch Arts Center. I've made a note to reach out to Breakthrough Urban Ministries if there are other people that know people there. But really just trying to be sensitive about that on the ground or that kind of programmatic or thematic partner to be involved with City Open. So that's why we wanted to present today. And I'll turn it over to Genevieve and Louisa around kind of the discussion and feedback.
So I think Latham and Maida had to leave, but they're very enthusiastic in the chat. So I'm gonna read just, Latham said, excited to keep conversation with folks and think the crossover potential with camp is really rich. So that was it's great to hear. Maida said, this is great. Yes, let's collaborate through camp. Also should add First Church of the Brethren, Central Park and Congress. Is this on the other side? Yeah, I think so. It's another potential partner. And also had Honeypot Performance working in We Will Chicago. I think I mentioned this before. So they're hoping to be also in Garfield Park. We'll love to collaborate that way too. So I think there was just very much enthusiasm and interest. Craig, you're the only one left from having knowledge of the event.
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking for parking, and I didn't want to jump in. But like them said, I think there's a lot of overlap. And also, I was just thinking about potential people that I can connect you and L to, just in general. Front Porch, I just got off a meeting with them. We're planning on doing some work perhaps with them, but just in general, I'm just thinking about just a central region that covers the hub is like Garfield Park, the Golden Dome and stuff like that. And so there are community partners that I work with, the program manager, Sonica Ruiz, that I can just connect you all with, because I think Sonica or Art or Derek over there with the Park District would know a lot of different partners that you all can potentially reach out to, organizations that they work with already, that camp might not potentially already be involved with, but because that's their region and they're doing a lot of local programming, they'll probably be able to put you in contact with. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to partake and watch and see all the great work that you all are doing. And if you could just send me the slides or whatever, I was driving, so I couldn't see all of the things. But Angelou, I miss you too. I was gonna give you a shout out. I was gonna give you all the love for all the work that you helped with us at AIA as well. But yeah, if in any way I can help, y'all know I'm there to help in any way. So
This is great. I feel like, it took us a couple of months to just think of like what would be, instead of reinventing the wheel, just how partnerships are a better way to go. And I'm just excited to hear that there's interest and there's excitement. So the next steps would be like follow up with, I think will be great to know. And I don't know if you have any insights on this, because I have not been part of that specifically for a camp. Like, what is the programming looking like these days? And then, yeah, what types of programming that we could be designing in collaboration, and yeah, just any insights that you have from your work on that.
We're just coming up with the programming, right? So
oh,
I think that we're just starting to have. So is that fortuitous in that regards? But I was just also going to think about there are various sort of initiatives with like My Shot, My Future that are taking place over in that area, and some other like mental health initiatives with the city. I'm just thinking about just like the various pop-ups and who can partner and where the potential funding can be. I will point you in the direction, like not to get too technical and detailed about it, but I'm just thinking about, as you all have these pop-ups in these areas, like what else could be provided for the community while you're gathering stories. That's sort of like these conversations that we've been having in general, is like not just activating, but like also being able to really filter out into like community needs, right? Like really be able to point to like some of these groups that are doing real work, and can they be a part of like all the activations that we're doing. So
yeah, no, that's really great. Anyone, so Craig, can you just describe for everyone your your role with camp? Just, I know it, but I'm not sure others do.
So like it started with community engagement, but then like I mean I do some marketing and UX work. So they, with the website, it was some asking of that UX work, but in general with the parks, my work goes over with like new initiatives and then integrative marketing. So I kind of hop between many departments that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just sent a quick question in the chat too. I'd love to hear how camp dealt with 2020. I mean, there's the digital difficulties I know we hear a lot about, but like I also heard that the engagement was really rich with camp, and I'd love to hear like where you saw the various neighborhoods kind of see different responses.
Okay, well, two different ways. Like I guess with night outs, right? So I overlap with night out in the parks, and for 2020 we had to move totally digital, right? Like all the outdoor events and things like that move totally online, and festivals went online, and I think with all of these projects with the park district, because there were sort of like these long-standing partnerships, like with Open Architecture Chicago, and how it sort of got related to this camp project is that I have been working with Latham for, I think it's coming up on 3 years now, with the Douglas 18 project over in Douglas Park with the mini golf course. And so I think with a lot of those partnerships with the park district, some of the work that we do in general as well, is that like I've been finding that like it's been really important for us to have long-standing relationships with these communities in the city of Chicago, right? Like I know when I did ArchiWorks, our ArchiWorks program was like 9 months and we were out, right? And I don't think any sort of meaningful engagement, well, let me say engagement that you can actually measure the results, can take place in short period of times. That's just like my personal opinion. I'm really big on like relationship building and seeing how those relationships build over time, and they sort of multiply. And so I mean, like in general, I can't tell people how to do their engagement work, but I'm not a fan of like the pop in and dip sort of like thing that we do in the design world. So that's a whole nother soliloquy.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I answer your question? I don't know if I answered it. But we did it the I don't know. We call folks. we did it like, I guess someone used that word analog, right? Like we met some folks face to face, and yeah. So
Yeah.
we called.
Another thing that we'd kind of been thinking about this season too was what, there's so many cool projects and people already, as you were saying, doing the real work in these neighborhoods. And so it's not that we're necessarily coming up with anything new or trying to be another one of those things, but we're wondering what is City Open's support and niche, I think. I don't know if you necessarily had any thoughts immediately, but that's one of the things that we're thinking through too, is like, what can City Open provide work that camp is already doing, work that and supporting there or other orgs in the neighborhood. And that's definitely an ongoing conversation.
Well, in general, I think design serves a function because it can really glue a lot of these sort of like neighborhood factions together. Like, it can really sort of synthesize all of these different agendas. What I've seen is that, I'll just talk about my experience in North Lawndale. There can be just many pockets of groups or collectives doing different work, and what I've seen when there are designers in the space, the designers get privy to multiple layers or stratas of information, whether it's coming from the city, which I don't think a lot of community orgs get that sort of level of detail of working with like DPD or working directly with the city, or actually getting, when I say authentic information, like it's not being filtered, right? And it's not being filtered through the lens of what's appropriate for that conversation. So even some work that we were doing, I had to finally tell or suggest, I don't want to say tell, but we suggested that like the organizations that are all working with arts and culture in North Lawndale, that we all just get together and sort of start to talk about our planning and things like that. Because myself, David Brown and like Eric Hotchkiss, we were just all hearing like different bits of information. We would have almost in a way more information than like some of the residents, which I don't think is great, but I do think that when it is sort of brought together, then that can also be used as a tool to help the community.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I really love the artist cohorts that camp pulls together, and having an artist representative and an engagement facilitator kind of bring all of, I think it's a really interesting collaboration. Yeah, that's really compelling. And I'm just asking questions that come up, so anyone else feel free to jump in. But
yeah, the other thing that we can do is just kind of break the session and use the rest of. We don't want to put all the questions on you, Craig, but we really appreciate the generous time that you're spending with us, because you're also a thought partner and that has multiple hats, so that's also very helpful for this group. But also, one thing that we could do with the rest of the time is like a little bit of debrief, right? Like, what do we take out of all this kind of feedback, and maybe thinking, how do we want to spend our last workshop? If it's a session in which we want to design, how do we want to do this over do we want to do a prototype in the summer? I don't know if that is the case, but let's design or designate the time to do that over the next workshop. Or we just want to spend time thinking of the fall and thinking of, how do we take this project and intersect with, for instance, Chicago Architecture Biennial and working with some of the work that David Brown is putting forward with the available city and activation of vacant spaces, which obviously all these ideas and the story catcher operates in a lot of that vacancy, spaces of vacancy. So I will leave it. I think I would like to open that space now for the next 15 minutes or so to think of the group. How do we want to spend like our last session?
I think also like, so just a little recap, because I'm not sure how much of this was in the working sessions and how much of it was in the city open sessions, but so we have a plan right now. I think we had set up a goal to get 5 kind of prototype stories on the story mapping. And I think we identified a couple. I mean, we'll have something from Maida, we'll have something from Jason. And then if there were, I guess, so still brainstorming kind of other people to that we could potentially, see if they were interested in sharing a story would be great. And then, so that was on the digital side. And then on the analog side, Emma talked about this on her slides, but getting 15, was it 10 maybe? I can't remember how the number. We had a goal number, let's say it was 10 postcards distributed, and these would be, the pre-addressed, to also collect those stories with the thought that maybe eventually those could live somewhere. So that, I guess, that postcard distribution work, it sounds like is going to happen this Saturday. So, and then the story collecting, I don't know if we have a date set on that yet. And this is, it looks like Louisa's pulling up the, oh, okay. This is our page, no.
Just walking through story maps as the platform. Yeah. Just noting down, Anjali noted in the chat, talking to Pascal at Block Code to build awareness. He's a journalist, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's the author of that last article about the Pulaski Madison corridor. Yeah.
One of the I am still responding to Camp, but also one of the things we had briefly touched on throughout some of the workshops too is the role of artists and creatives in the community, and it's within East Garfield Park. We've been looking at Madison Street, and there's a whole almost like arts district to the north of the neighborhood as well, and it feels a little disconnected from the rest of the neighborhood. And I'm curious to work with or to connect with Front Porch Art Center and to talk to other artists in the neighborhood that and residents of perspectives of perceptions of that arts and creative area. It's a physical area, really, that feels like its own network, and how to connect it more with what everything else that is happening in the neighborhood. But looping back, I think to Paolo's question, what does that look like? For the summer, I think there's a lot of rich opportunity to follow up with a lot of these leads, and to look at showing up to events and talking to people, and I don't know if people are interested in pairing up and continuing to go to things, going to things being both physical and digital safely as possible. But that's something that I might be interested in doing and attending with some of you guys that we got to meet once at that walking tour.
Yeah, I think this is Alvin. I think there are a lot of community level programming, one-off events, or like series that are art related, that are community growth related types of opportunities that we could collaborate on and possibly start laying the groundwork for what could happen in the fall. And so what you probably would do in those instances is kind of maybe give this idea a road test to different groups and see what their what they might want to contribute, or how much their level of interest could drive what happens in the fall. And from there, then the fall session becomes something more that is co-curated in a way by not just us, but by also some of these community orgs and groups. So you can use the summer as that time to lay the groundwork for the fall.
I think one of the things that I would be interested to see as well, and this kind of comes down to a little bit the practicalities of what we're trying to do here, with regards to like kind of getting some of the materials out there and stuff like that. But I think we've kind of like talked about artists and things like that. But one of the things that I think would be interesting, I think might be helpful, is talking to some of the business owners in the area as well, because especially with regards to the aspects of like the postcards, like we had talked briefly about that being something that we like can just like have as a stack on like some desk somewhere at a different business or something like that, as a means of like distributing it as a standalone. But I think it's also a situation where most of our kind of like story catching methods that we've talked about don't necessarily talk, or like we haven't fully addressed talking to like business owners within the area, like the restaurant owner of like that serves like the seafood restaurants that's on Madison, like talking to them, getting their story and things like that, and like how do we do that? And so I think it's a little bit of like getting down to the practicalities of what we're trying to do, but also like identifying any groups that we haven't thought about. And I think like business owners is something we haven't really fully talked about.
Just kind of picking back off of both of those ideas, I'm just thinking that like Night Out in the Park, we said schedule in June. If you just wanted to map out like all the arts and all those arts and cultural events, and I could probably get some of those dates probably earlier than that to you all, but just in general, they'll post them on the website, and you all will meet multiple artists around the city, right? But just mainly all the audiences that'll show up in that area, right? All those and community members who are gonna show up in that area. And then that way you can just naturally like meet the people and they'll keep seeing your faces. And you can kind of invite them naturally or organically and start planning things with them.
Yeah, definitely. And to Anjali's point in the chat, I think that would be a solid way to start too, is to, it would be awesome if we could somehow compile all of the various newsletters and the ongoing events too. And I don't know what that looks like, because it's something that the tools that we've looked at is struggling with or grappling with, right? Is how do we create like the framework for a platform or a repository of information to continue building and continue updating as people hear about it or as information kind of reveals itself. And I do think that's a good first step too, is to even just have a platform to populate events.
Great. So, okay, let's see what we have so far. Oh, wait. We have creating a platform to amplify these events, doing more outreach. So pitching to the community groups, the artists and the art collectors in the areas, and then business owners and getting their stories and lessons learned. So these are all useful things for what we can do to, I guess, just going back to that question too of like the last workshop, should we maybe, what do you guys think about building on this idea, or are there any things missing? I'm curious, like if there's been things that are kind of missing from this season and the story that we've heard so far, and if there's kind of any areas that we would want to plug or brainstorm. Yeah.
I think I would suggest also like an offline meeting with Camp and Maida, and see, now that they heard what we did after we met for the first time, and then Latham just had a chance to process this, and then we heard from Craig, so now we can have a more direct conversation. I would also try to connect with Garfield Park Community Council, like on a one-on-one. I feel like those are just generally kind of necessary conversations to follow up if we want to solidify the partnerships, right? So one thing that could be like, who wants to be part of those meetings, beyond, Lisa, Genevieve, myself, and Elle, if anyone is interested in joining that as a little working group and just expand the conversation. It will be more like listening and trying to find ways to partner. Because I think there's a lot of work that got done, and that was very intense. But now this is the moment to maybe strategize how do we actually solidify some partnerships. But I would also I think the question of how do we want to spend our last session together, I would choose one thing, and then maybe we can workshop it. So it stays as something that collectively got framed or discussed or articulated or planned out. Like, I'm super jazzed about that board. And I don't know how that gets done. And like, what are the mapping board, the story catcher? I love that idea. That could be half community board, half story catcher, half I almost want to make a pathway to see how that can get implemented and feature, and like, what are the, does it have to be standalone? Can it be like attached to a wall? I just almost want to explore that in a much more tactical way.
I also think like the bulletin board is interesting if someone is always like, you're not curating it, but you're just taking care of it, right? The problem with like boards is that it rains, but if it was like something where everything was always like, someone just took care of it like a little garden, it'd be an interesting experiment of like, could you just have people know more about opportunities? Like, I'm not trying to like censor things. I'm just like, every week someone takes care of it, because that's the problem, right? With those boards, is maintenance.
Yeah, and also design it so that there's some protection from the weather too. It's another opportunity.
Actually, we could, Love Fridge has a regular rotating group of people maintaining their fridges. We could partner with them, reach out. They have a fridge off of which I'm on their map right now, but it's not the right spot. No, actually, there is not a fridge in Garfield Park, but we could do something similar then. I think like setting up a rotation.
Or we just promise we'll take care of the fridge too, and the fridge and the little lending library and the community board. Like, we could just like aggregate everything that Garfield Park doesn't provide right now as a fun thing.
If we're thinking about doing gardening stuff, one of the gardening groups that I get plants from and help to set up their plant distribution sessions is called the Chicago Community Gardeners Association. And actually they have a plant distribution next Sunday. And I can get a bunch of plants, and if we find a spot, maybe plant some stuff. That might be a way to kind of claim a spot and then have it where it is an attractive place where everybody can come, and then, right then and there, you might get questions being asked about what's going on here, and then that's going to be an opportunity to engage people. but they do plant distributions every month from April till October. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to get plants.
I love plants. Anytime there's like thoughts of new plants, it just gets so exciting. Okay, so I guess we're pretty close to our time here. Just kind of in summation. So today we were kind of doing a share out of what we've learned this far in the season, and then also, talking to camp. Thank you, Sean, for being here, and Maida and Latham and Annie, who have already left. But really looking forward to discovering and exploring, I guess, more of those partnerships and what they could grow into. As it was said many times, like we don't want to do this isolated. That's not the point. So yeah, I think, all the ideas about partnerships that we have coming forward, keep them coming. And that's all stuff that we can keep exploring. Next session, it sounds like we will be looking a little bit more about maybe imagining what this installation could look like, and how it connects to the research that we've done this season, and what next season might be. And I think, well, please chime in if I've missed anything, but thank you all for your hard work and being parts of these conversations, and especially producing the stuff, or the images and the graphics. Really awesome effort this past week, 2 weeks. So yeah.
Does that sound like a good idea? Like focusing next session, just kind of unpacking what would it mean to make that installation happen with all the elements that have been identified throughout the season. Can I get a thumbs up? A physical one or a virtual one? I don't really mind. Okay. Cool.
Great. Then everyone have a lovely evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Wow, my cat just right on schedule just started yelling at me just now.
Elle, can you stop recording?
Sorry. Hey, you all know if you need anything, Paula.
Yeah.